So what's the topic of the day? The topic is AI, artificial intelligence in an agile environment. On that side, it's a topic that really kind of came out to me. To be very, very specific, I could almost name the date, January 12th, earlier this year. I was teaching a class at a naval facility, and a gentleman came in and said, "Have you heard about this thing called Chat GPT?" And I said, "No." So he gave me quite a class on it right from the get-go. We've been using it in a lot of different places. So when I was kind of trying to face well, what do you actually do with this thing? You basically have two thoughts. One is you can ignore it, or two, you can kind of sort of just get on board and be a part of it. I have chosen and to just get on board with it them, on those areas. And I'm always a little bit shocked of how people kind of approach it. Back a few months ago, I was flying back from Colorado Springs, and it was a late flight. And I was sitting. It was a late. It was a late flight, but I got a late ticket, to get on the flight. And so I was in the middle, and there was this older gentleman on my left, and this younger female on my right. And about 2 or 3 hours into the flight, I kind of got bored, and I said, "Well, why don't I just interview them?" And I said, and what was kind of coming up in my mind was, hey, what do you think about this thing called AI? And now, being stereotypical, I thought that the gentleman on my left was going to say, no, 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 get away. And that guy, he was all on board with it. He was like just driving it in. He was, showing me his little phone and, just how technical and he was just all on top of it. And I thought, well, that was odd, kind of strange reaction. So I turned to my right, and I was, the young female, kind of fresh out of college. In my mind, I thought that she was going to be like, even more than him. And she said, "No, that thing will never take my job away from me." And she was a civil engineer, kind of working on, city planning and things like that. And all I was like was, "Oh, my dear child, you have no idea what's coming there on those sites." So who are we? We are TMOG Learning Center. What we do is we train and develop project managers. That is what we do. We also deliver projects. So not only are we teachers, but we're practitioners. What we do is what we teach, and what we teach is what we do. Most of our sphere is in the corporate government because we are in Virginia Beach. I do a fair bit amount of business with Navy and Army and so forth, in that arena on that side. So we've been around for a number of years and been for, PMI, authorized training partners, and so forth, all in those areas. So just so you know that, we do this for a living, really. The agenda that I want to kind of cover, and with all good meetings, you should always have some kind of an agenda so you kind of know what direction. Now, when I do these, as well as with classes, even though I have a set thing, I do have to have, guardrails and things like that. It really is a more of a topical discussion, on those areas. Anybody that comes about and says that, I am certified in AI, which, by the way, I am. I got my low certification. But that by no means means that you're an expert. I mean, I think everything I learned was outdated like the next week. Yeah, so it's just a continuous learning cycle on those areas. So if there's thoughts or questions or anything, feel free, excuse me, to raise your hand, or in the chat is awesome. On those areas. I do intend this to be an interactive discussion on that side. So I'm going to kind of just start off with, what is Agile and what is AI, just to be kind of clear on that side. I do not know you, so I don't know what your level, you may be the Agilist of the world. I don't know on those pieces, but just to kind of make sure that we have a baseline to kind of start from. And then, just generally speaking, what is AI? There's only going to be like one slide on what is AI. Then I want to get into a case study, and I'm going to use a real. Obviously, I have to kind of air quotes use fictionalize the the company, mainly because it is a real company and using it in real time, on those areas. But as I can be kind of working with them, it's been very helpful, in those areas. They are a Fortune 500 company in that regard, so that's been pretty awesome. And then just kind of tie up some loose ends, some of the benefits and AI tools, things like that. And then the big thought and consideration on that side. We should plan to end by 1 o'clock on those areas. Afterwards, I'll be sure to PDF this and send it to you, and then we'll kind of do some magic on the video, kind of go from there. Are there any thoughts, questions, or concerns about our time together? Do we give me a thumbs up or thumbs down? Okay. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, the virtual world of teaching, we actually went virtual in like one day. The Pentagon sent we had a class here, and the Pentagon sent us home in on like Tuesday. And so when they sent all the students home on Tuesday, the next day we literally came up on virtual the next on Wednesday. So thank you for my kiddos; they were very instrumental. Agile. First thing is, I am hoping that the product owner has a vision. That's what I'm hoping. Back some years ago, when my children were smaller, 2 to 3 years old, 3 to 5 years old, excuse me, I had this vision of having them to have a huge playground set, in my backyard. Now, if you don't know me, but I am not the gentleman who's very good with hammer and nails. I am not that guy. Okay, on that side. So if the vision was that I was going to build this entire Taj Mahal and, for my kids, by the time it was finished, they would have graduated from college, meaning that it would never have been any good for them. So what I decided to do was to take an agile approach to it. So if you have a product that can go into minimum business increments or minimal viable product, whichever word we want to use today, you have to have enough of where you could have enough of the requirements complete so that the customer will actually accept it. Now they may want more, that's fine, but they can actually accept it and use it. And so this very first iteration that we have is just a bare bones. It's really just a swing set. Are the kids happy? Yes. Is mother happy? Yes. Is dad happy? Yes. Everybody's happy. However, in my mind, I still want a little bit more. And guess what? The kids do too. So on the next iteration, we add a slide to it. Everybody's happy again. We build on a little bit more, and we add, kind of upgrade different parts of it, on those pieces. Also did a little bit of work on the garden in the back, at the same time. Now, that was a joke, so it was okay to smile. But nevertheless, did I ever get to the final vision? The answer is no. And you know what? That can be perfectly fine on that side. It's just where we wanted to get to. If we got there, awesome. If not, the customer can still use it. So one of the very first things that have to be kind of set up is, can the product actually be delivered in increments, just as a matter of fact? Well, obviously, there's going to be a lot more to this, but nevertheless, just to kind of make sure we're on the same page. Most people have seen this placemat before. This is a typical agile process. And then organizations will kind of refine it to make it more suitable for themselves. There are three major players I want you to be concerned about. One is the product owner, the other is the team, and then the third is the Scrum Master. You, as the project manager, you are the Scrum Master, okay? So what's the role of the product owner? They are to have that vision. And I hope and pray that they do have a vision, because that is what the team is actually looking for. At some point in time, the product owner will meet with the team, and the team will get enough information to figure out how to do this. And so the team will kind of look back and they'll break up that large project into increments that can be delivered iteratively on that side. So that is awesome in that regards. Once they kind of have all of that kind of planned out, then they kind of figure out what their timings are, their sprints, and and so forth. As they kind of build on it. Now, what is that, Scrum Master? What is your job? Your job is to organize the team through training. That's the way I kind of look at it, because ultimately you want them to be self-organized. Some of my favorite project managers, and Laura always gets a kick out of this, are my kindergarten teachers. Laura, by the way, is a former teacher in the secondary education system. So she always like kindergarten teacher. But think about this for a moment. A kindergarten teacher takes a 5 or 6 year old and over the course of a year, make them independent. That is essentially what you do with your agile team is you make them independent, on those areas. So that's the basic construct. The teams will kind of go into their sprints every 24 hours daily. They'll kind of do a daily Scrum meeting. Sometimes we'll call it a huddle. Lots of different names for it. After several sprints, they'll have some kind of finished work, and then they'll demonstrate it to the customer, product owner. Make sure get some feedback, and they'll also do the retrospective, and then they'll repeat the system again, on those areas. So that is just a brief overview on just what Agile is, on those areas. Give me a thumbs up if we're good. Give me a thumbs down if there's any questions. Okay, good. So let's talk a little bit about AI. When I think it was in March or June, it was in June, actually. These dates just kind of resonate. I was talking to a IT manager out of Germany, and she reminded me that AI has been around for 100 years, in that regard. And now it's been commercialized. And that's what we're really kind of saying. Most people say, kind of tie back to Alan Turing back in World War II. Most people know him from the Enigma, and the data scientists and so forth. In the growth and development thereof. But AI, artificial intelligence, in and of itself, has been around for a number of years. All right, so fast forward into the main topic. Let's talk about Agile. Let's talk about implementing these pieces. I am really big into discipline Agile on those areas. On that side, one of the reasons why is that I truly believe that that one size does not fit all, but teams need to have a different way of doing things relative to their context and their culture, on those areas. So I tend to lean heavily on discipline Agile. We do that as a training course, mainly usually in for companies and organizations.
Disciplined Agile is a hybrid of the world's leading practices and methods that provides straightforward guidance to enable you to choose your way of working. It's a people-first, learning-oriented, hybrid Agile toolkit that will enable you to effectively combine strategies from Scrum, Agile modeling, extreme programming, Kanban, Agile data, SAFe, and many other sources, so you can tailor and scale based on the situation you face. You'll be able to look beyond prescriptive Agile frameworks and get better results and reach true business agility faster. How does it all work? It all starts with process goals. Process goals are high-level process outcomes. Things like improving quality, coordinating activities, or exploring the initial scope of a project. To make a change, simply select the process goal most closely aligned with the change you want or need to make. Each of these process goals is elaborated by a process goal diagram. Process goal diagrams are visual depictions of the aspects, which Disciplined Agile calls decision points. You need to think through about the goal and several options to choose from. Each will have its advantages and disadvantages. To examine these advantages and disadvantages, Disciplined Agile provides option descriptions and trade-offs tables. With Disciplined Agile, instead of failing faster, you'll have the decision support to help you succeed sooner.
All right, now I finished that inspiring video. You can still see my screen, correct? So discipline agile, in the presentation, there's like a hyperlink to it and so forth, and so you have a link, but it is open source, in that regard. So I'm just going to kind of go real quick to it. The Oh, there we go. All right. And it's organized fairly straightforward on this. Again, usually when I'm kind of working with teams, we'll give them more introduction. It's a 2-day course. And then usually have a workshop towards the end because the point of the material is to actually use it, correct? On that side. But it's kind of broken up. Now, the way they look at their phase, the way that they look at the way the work is going to roll out is they'll do it by phase. So they'll have an inception phase, construction phase, transition phase. Inception, think of it as planning. Think of construction as doing the work, and think of transition as handing it off on those areas. Then you're going to have an ongoing, which kind of covers all the below, on that side. So that's generally speaking how it is organized. Okay. Can you see my power deck? Okay, excellent. Okay. Well, that worked well. I'm kind of shocked. So we have inception, construction, transition. Ongoing is ongoing on those areas. Let's hyper focus. We're going to hyper focus on each area. Okay. We're not going to go through all of the decision points and just kind of highlight just a couple. So in the inception, there was a multitude of different decision points that could be had. But here, we're going to just look at explore scope. And then under explore scope, there were several options that you had. One of the options was user story. Okay. So with the user story, with using ChatGPT, okay, on that, what I did was, and I actually did this in real time with the client I'm currently working with, okay, on that side. The prompt that I used was using a discipline agile process within a food and beverage manufacturing plant. Create a user story for an operator who needs to input data into a digital device on a back shift. One of the key things on the prompts is that you have to be as detailed as possible because that's what's kind of resonating with it. Sometimes I'll even add in there, depending on the language and so forth, speaking to a fourth grader, or speaking to a high school student, or speaking to someone with a PhD, just so they can kind of get the educational level kind of in the right genre. The output that ChatGPT came out with was a title, digital batch record entry for night shift efficiency, which is actually pretty good, from here now, looking at it again and again. And then the story. So just as a reminder, user stories are from the end user's point of view. They're from the end user's point of view, basically kind of saying as a blank, I want something and the reason behind it. Now, generally speaking, whenever I'm doing my user stories, I like for my folks to also add in the conditions under that they're working. So to me, if you're working in a manufacturing site, it's important to know that you are working the back shifts, meaning 11 to 7 or, Saturdays, as opposed to a traditional day shift on those areas. Now, you may seem that this is not that impressive, okay? However, I don't want to disappoint. However, I do want to see if I can pull this up, and it's my Word document. Okay, can you see my Word document? Okay, good. All right, so these are the same words that were up on the slide. Okay. This is the story. As an operator, working the back shift in our food and beverage manufacturing plant, I want to efficiently input batch production data into the digital system using a handheld device. This will enable me to seamlessly record critical information during the night shift, ensuring accuracy, traceability, and compliance with our quality standards. That's actually pretty good, in and of itself. at least kind of like really getting into, hey, what should you be thinking about? Now, what was awesome was that the client I was working with, really kind of gave them some clues about how to think about what their actual back shift workers are actually thinking. And now they're kind of sort of able to go back to their back shift operators and say, hey, does this kind of really describe you? Just as a matter of fact. And then they can start moving and adjusting, as needed. ChatGPT did not disappoint. They talked about the acceptance criteria, which is a part of the user story. How do you know that you've actually, what's the definition of done essentially? How do you know when you've actually accomplished everything? And they did a pretty good job. As an operator, I want to log in securely. Once log in, I want the system to prompt me. As an operator, I want the ability to scan or manually input. The system should validate the batch information to prevent errors. As an operator, I want user-friendly interface, and so forth, all the way down. And it kind of gives, one of the things that Laura and I kind of noticed was that, ChatGPT has a tendency to use numbers. I don't know if that's just a me thing or if that's everybody, on those pieces, but she's pretty quick to say, hey, John, did you get that out of ChatGPT? On those areas. I say that humorously, but I would honestly just kind of sort of tell people where the source came from. Okay, so I say that humorously, but be sure, hey, this is me. This is the first input out of a ChatGPT, and then I'm going to refine it from there. And I'll kind of explain the reason and logic behind that a little bit later. And then, of course, kind of a summary piece, what their aims are. So what I was able to do again was, we created several user stories. And then, but we started off using the Chat GPT in order to kind of get us to a good starting point on those areas. And that proved to be pretty helpful. Actually, it kind of cut down a lot on the development time because now, I had a pretty good format on those areas. All right, so I'm going to jump into my PowerPoint deck here. I did not do like the secure funding. We actually did, and charge by feature, which is one of the options within Discipline Agile. If you haven't really looked at the Discipline Agile setup, I would really highly encourage you to. Okay, so let's there we go. Let's jump in from inception to construction. So construction, just kind of think of it as doing the work, on that side. And again, there's going to be multiple decision points and then options that you can use. So under here, improve quality, and then under improve quality, we're kind of hyper focusing on certain areas. Improve deliverable template, and then apply concise template on that side. Here again, the prompt that I used was user using a disciplined agile process. So I think on this one, I was trying to be like really specific, like which process to use on that. And believe it or not, you will get different flavors depending on the type of processes you use. Within a food and beverage manufacturing plant, create a template for an operator who will need to input data into a digital device on a back shift. Now, what I have also noticed is that, AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, is that it kind of keeps the data that it's already gathered, on the forefront. So, it kind of has an idea, unless you correct it, that you really are talking about a back shift, an individual, in those areas. And it's going to kind of keep that same logic, unless you directly tell it not to, on those areas. The input or output, excuse me, was digital batch record entry for night shift efficiency. The record entry, the role as an operator. The goal is streamline the process of inputting batch production data into the digital system during the night shift for accuracy and compliance. Again, kind of jumping over into my Word document here. Creating the template. And it really kind of created a pretty good template, on the pieces, the acceptance criteria. ability to log in to securely with unique credential. System prompts the operator to select the current night shift. Essentially, what it did was that it took these desires, goals, and put them into a 1-0 yes no format. In other words, it's either done or it's not. Okay, which is typically the way that we actually want. You want as little gray area, as possible. So now it just really kind of becomes a checklist. Now, what I kind of suggested to the teams, because as the consultant in this area, they're actually kind of responsible for their whole work. The in those pieces is make sure that you agree with it. Your technologists as well as the operators. So that should be part of that team formation that has been created. And then let's go into the third one. So we have inception, construction, transition. All projects are going to have some kind of a handoff. Now, the handoff can either be to another individual, another team. It can be right back to the same team, meaning that project team now has been operationalized in PMI and PM terms, or it could be in the life. Okay, but there is going to be some kind of transition, in that regards. In this case, it could be more on a positive side. Let's ensure production readiness. In here, under ensure stakeholder readiness. Again, stakeholder, that's anybody or anything that believes that they're a part of the project. The issue is not whether it's stakeholder or not. The issue is what are you going to do with them? So you do have to make the assumption that these are the key stakeholders that you really have to work with. And you want to communicate deployment. Hopefully, all of your project management plans have communications baked into the plan. Hopefully, they do. And the reason why is because communications is the deliverable until the project is complete. Okay, so on that side. All right, so we have communicate deployment. Now, I have to admit, ChatGPT did a pretty good job on this one. Because it's like, what would I've done? And, I probably would have eventually gotten to, the level of detail. I was actually kind of surprised at this one. So using a DA process within a food and beverage manufacturing plant, create a communications plan to inform 150 operators across 3 shifts who work in a unionized environment, because there's a difference between the two groups, that a new process will be deployed. Now, on this, you're also kind of talking about that transition plan, the benefits management plan, and so forth. Okay, how do you get people to actually use it? In that regards. So the initial output on chat was introducing new digital batch record process. Notice that I didn't really tell what it was, but again, it kind of remember, hey, this is what this gentleman was kind of talking about the whole time, so it must be the same. We're talking about that, even though he didn't specifically state that. And then the objective to make sure we're clear on what we're actually trying to do, to effectively, in the objective per chat, to effectively communicate the deployment of the new digital batch record process to 150 operators working in a unionized environment across 3 shifts within our food and beverage manufacturing plant. Again, I would go back to my clients and ask them, do you actually agree with the objectives? And this is what ChatGPT came out. It listed out the key stakeholders, the operators, 150 representing all shifts, day, evening, night. The shift supervisors, that's pretty good, actually. In their case, they would have called them leads and things like that. Union representatives, I did say it was a unionized. Okay, so on that. Now, this might be where you touch bases with your HR manager. How much does the union have to be informed? How much do they, whatever the legalities are. And then, of course, the IT support team, sneaker support, right? On that side. And then here are the communication channels. It listed out the town hall meetings, shift briefings, union meetings, digital communications, and training sessions. I actually laid it out pretty well in that regards. What is the audience? All the operators. What is the purpose? And the frequency. Now, what I would probably do at this point, just out of care, is if I wanted more granular detail, is I would almost take this and input it back into ChatGPT to actually give an agenda for the meeting, on that side. So you can continue to drill down, on those areas. The shift briefing, same format, union. I like this. Well, actually, on the shift briefings, detailed explanation daily for the first week of deployment. That's pretty good. Union, hey, are there any concerns? Because a lot of times the union, what's the impact on the workers and what, as their work or job actually change and things of that nature. Your digital communications, this actually worked out well for this group. And the reason why was that one of their goals actually is to be completely digital, completely paperless. So they have they try to have like zero paper, which is quite a feat considering it's a pretty large concern, in that regards. And then of course training session. The timeline, a couple of weeks before, the awareness campaign. In other words, let people know that, something's about to happen. The deployment week, I like that, the deployment, deploy. Town hall meetings, daily shift, on-site IT support. This is a lot better. I've been around for, a minute or two, and I've seen all kinds of rollouts. Sometimes people don't take the rollout seriously, and they just spring it up onto the people. And normally it's with the good things don't happen. Let me just say that. There's going to be some disruption. So I like the idea that they actually kind of went back and saying, hey, make sure that you do some kind of warm up, socialize the idea, and then we're going to have deployment week, so it's not just one and done, but over a period of time. And you know what? We're going to follow up with them after the fact, on those pieces, and then have ongoing monthly progress updates. Of course, the feedback mechanism. I like the suggestion box, whether it's physical or digital. The union reps. In this case, they kind of got that right in the sense that, if you, depending on what kind of environment, culture, relationship you have, to bring them on board. And then, of course, post deployment, because we all know that there's going to be another project after this. So let's do our lessons learned, kind of get those kind of all pointed out on those areas. And then, of course, notes, on those pieces. Oh, ongoing. Yeah, there's 3 plus 1. So you have construction, inception, construction, and then transition. Ongoing is all the way throughout. There's really only 2, grow team members, improve skills and knowledge, provide feedback. But, improving the skills and knowledge, that's really training face to face on those areas. And they did a pretty good job, fairly similar type format to the communications, just really kind of talking about the training aspect. But, the training plan. How are you actually going to work with these people? You're going to do familiarization training, hands-on, compliance, and then problem solving. Now, if it was me, by habit, I would have did, crawl, walk, run, or explain, demonstrate, guide, empower. I would have gone automatically to that format, in those areas. But it's essentially kind of about the same, in that regard. I like the idea that they kind of talked about the problem solving here, on those pieces, in those areas. The training schedule, I think where I would have had a little bit of problems with the training schedule is because I don't know if ChatGPT had enough information about this environment. So that's where, the concept, is pretty rock solid for this group. But the actual specific piece of it, would have had to refine, in those areas. I like the way that it said like week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, on those pieces. Again, I don't think this is a knock on ChatGPT. I think it's the idea that it just didn't know enough about the environment. That's all, in those regards. but the concepts are, pretty rock solid, on this side. Okay. Jumping into tools here, but just to make sure, are there any thoughts? Does this resonate ideas of how you can use it in your workplace? Jira with Agile Craft, Agile Craft, they just did their merger piece, on that side. Two of my major customer groups use that, Jira quite extensively. Clarizen, Meistertask, Squirrel. One I did not put up here was ClickUp. I should have put that up there. On that side, because that is actually turning out to be pretty well. I will say this though, a lot of people, and this I am just saying, this is just my opinion. This is just my opinion. They all kind of sort of operate about the same way. It just depends if you like fuchsia or pink. They or gray or you know, you know, you know, blue. Yeah, it almost kind of becomes like that. You want your data showing horizontally or vertically on that side. And what I usually kind of coach people, if your organization is already standardized on a product or team, I would just get on board, learn it, move on. If you do have the option of looking and exploring, by all means do. And there's a lot of great tools that are out there on that side. Points for consideration as we kind of wrap this up. And I kind of come to this conclusion about 6 months ago, maybe 5 months ago. Like I said, this is kind of evolving as we go. I think that it is better if you, the human, acts as if you're the teacher and ChatGPT is the student. I think if you approach it that way, then everything sort of kind of helps out tremendously. So if you're the teacher and you're dealing with, let's say, fourth graders or third graders, you wouldn't ask them to do like a major thesis paper. You would have to, one, kind of train them up in doing those things. But even if they did, you're the teacher, you need to go back and review their work and make sure, does it actually make sense? I think that, and these are just my thoughts, I think that ChatGPT in the hands of an individual who not know the topic. I mean, they do, I'm emphasizing that pretty harshly. I think it's a very dangerous tool. And the reason why is because they can lead them down the wrong path very easily. However, if they're very familiar with the topic, and in those areas, I think it just really speeds things up, in those areas. Back when they started doing this webinar, these webinars have been evolving. When we first kind of started, one of the going inputs was that a brand new person, like a junior project manager, can get up to the level of a mid-level manager pretty quick. And then a mid-level manager can like increase their skill sets, tremendously. I kind of backed off of that stance. I think that, if you're a junior person or just like learning, I think you're better off like doing the traditional pieces. But I think it's an awesome tool for those who know their jobs or at least have a good handle on the basics. And the reason why is because mistakes can be had, hallucinations, just going off off the beaten, off of paths that don't exist on those areas. So ChatGPT can make mistakes. It's almost like the communication, not the communication, but the training plan. While the concepts were okay, using it for that organization would not have worked, but because it just didn't know enough details. I would, experiment with the free versions. I gotta keep confidentiality. But a young gentleman that I know very, very well, I'll just say that. He bought the paid version, and I kind of have to wonder. I say, it is your money, but have you even touched the surface on the free versions yet? No. So I kind of, just kind of shake my heads a little bit. I experiment with those free versions. Now, if you are inside of a company, Fortune whatever company, you probably do need to buy. And one of the reasons why is because of security. As you put in information, you are kind of putting it all out there. Now, I've had lawyers, upload by accident. Well, they purposely uploaded it, but they didn't realize what was happening. The contracts, into the system. Now, I sincerely doubt that anybody can like find that very, very specific contract and kind of like use it against them. But it is, kind of sort of out there, on the pieces because that's how the machine learns, on those areas. So, just food for thought, especially on the security. I worked with a lot of military, and sometimes the folks I work with, their minds kind of go into, how can it be used against me? So they've been kind of cognizant on those pieces. Well, awesome. Hopefully everybody has enjoyed their time. I certainly